Good morning, everyone. Right now, everyone is, well, let's see, just me for now. Hopefully, we'll get more people as things go on. Okay, uh, webcasting tip, do not listen to your own videos while you're talking. That can be kind of weird. So far the delay is much better than last week. I've been playing around with uh, getting that, so hopefully we'll have a better experience than we've had the last couple of weeks. I'm still trying to figure this out. Welcome everyone to my webcast. I'm Joe Skeen. I still don't have a really catchy title for this webcast. If you have any ideas, you can tweet them to me at Joe Skeen Jr. You can also tweet me there for questions you have while you're watching this, whether it be live or after the fact. Today we're going to uh, start off where we left off last time. We had kind of got started with creating an Angular app in Plunker. And Plunker is a really great way to just kind of experiment and try things out, build out a proof of concept without having to install it or get any other tools set up or anything like that. But in order to really bring our app to the next level, we're going to need to take it out of Plunker and start developing it using an actual code editor. So here we go. This is our app that we were working on last week. When you click on the button, it changes the color of the title up here. The title's being bound, or the color of the title's being bound using style.color. That's just a DOM property that we're binding to, and Angular takes care of the rest. And color here means the color variable on our app component. We're also repeating once for every one of the colors in this array here, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. We're creating a button with style.background color bound to whichever color it is on. So we're going to take this and show you how to get started with building an Angular app in a way that you would normally do it. So during week 1, if you were with me at that time, you should have installed Visual Studio Code. If you haven't done that yet, you can still do that by going out to code.visualstudio.com and just doing a download from there. Visual Studio Code is going to be a great tool for us to work with Angular and other web technologies. And although there's many code editors out there and you can kind of choose whichever one you like, Visual Studio Code is one of my very favorite for working with web technologies. It understands very deeply all the code that you're going to be doing and gives you a lot of help. So go ahead and make sure that's installed, and then we're going to start that up. Now you'll want to make sure that you've kind of made a place for your code on your computer. For me, I just have like a code folder under C drive. When I was using Mac, I would put it under my user folder, but I like to just kind of stick different things under there. So that's what I'll do today, C drive /code /sandbox, and then I'll stick my new app in here. Now I might have gotten a little bit carried away here. I might need to back up just a bit. Oops, not too much there. We haven't actually created our app yet, so I'm going to go ahead and close the folder here. And alright. So in order to create our app, there's a lot of different ways you can create Angular apps, but I'd like to focus on getting started right now so you can understand the fundamentals of Angular rather than going over for a couple of hours all of how to set up the boilerplate for an Angular app. Luckily, the Angular community has created a tool called the Angular CLI, and that's going to help us to be able to get our app up and started in hardly any time at all. Now, from week 1, you should have also downloaded and installed Node.js. If you haven't done so, please go out there now, download and install Node.js. I'm doing 7.8 current. You can do either one of those, should work. Once you've done that, go back to your console and do npm install -g at Angular/CLI. This is the tool that we're going to use to generate our Angular app. That will take a minute here. Gosh, the latency is not bad this week. It's looking like both streams are only a few seconds behind where I'm talking, so that's cool. Alright, and while this is installing, let me just give you an idea of what this is going to do. The Angular CLI makes it possible for you to just, in one command, it will create a new project for you. It will set up all of your build tools, all of the different packages you'll need through NPM, and basically everything you need so you have a runnable Angular app as soon as you're done with that command. I like using this as a starting point. There are other ways you can start up Angular projects. There's a lot of good seed projects out there where you basically just clone that Git repository and then start building your app on top of it. But the CLI I really like because it already kind of wires things up with your name that you've chosen for your app and everything that you're going to need. So it's a great tool. So I'm going to go to my code directory and sandbox. Okay, so the command for Angular CLI is ng. You'll see ng a lot of places in the Angular community. It's just an abbreviation for Angular. So ng new, and then we get to name our app. Now, since we're doing this here, so we can do it as like a favorite color selector or something like that, or whatever you want to call it. I think I'm going to call this one color selector. And this will take a couple of minutes, probably. It's creating the files. It initialized the Git repository, so you already have the source control in place, and you'll know immediately if you've made changes above what they've provided for you, which is great. They're now installing all of the NPM packages, and soon they'll be done. In the meantime, we can already go ahead and open that folder in VS Code since it's been created. So let's go back to Sandbox, Color Selector, and this is the folder we want. Let's just take a look at our project here. So we've got our source folder. This has all of our Angular app stuff in here. Oh, that's interesting that they still... Oh, okay. Got it. I'm not sure why that's there. But basically what we're doing, if you look at our here, we've got this app / app component TS. We can actually start transferring some of our code over from the Plunker to this new app. Although they've already got, as you may recall from last week, I couldn't get the separate files to work for the HTML and such in the Plunker. I know I've gotten that to work before, but I'm not going to worry about that. They've already wired it up here in this, so I'm just going to copy things over and we'll see how this works. Let's put the styles. So again, this is the cascading style sheets affecting the kind of look and feel. And, oops. And things are slowing down. Alright. Okay, so we've got our HTML, we've got our CSS, and then here's the actual component here. And I'll just copy the inside parts of it. I don't want to mess anything up too much here. And paste that. So at this point we should have everything that we had before. Now let's see how things are going. It's still installing the npm. You'll notice that we have an error here because it hasn't actually installed that package yet. So it's like, I don't know what you're talking about here. That's okay. It'll come in just a minute. Let's walk through a couple of other things while we're in here and I can show you what's going on. This app.component.spec.ts file is the file for testing your Angular component here. This is using, I believe they're using Jasmine for this, which is a JavaScript testing framework. They call it a behavior-driven development testing framework. And basically it just allows you to specify your spec of what your app should do in a pretty natural language way. So when you run the test, it'll output a test result that's called app component should create the app. App component should have as title app works. Should render title in an h1 tag. And so when there's a test failure, it's giving you a very relevant error message as far as what part of the core functionality that you're expecting it to do is not working right. Let's see here. Looks like my stream has gone way down. Hold on a second here. Wow, this is way behind. Alright, thank you for your patience. I'm back. Alright, when we left off, I was installing npm packages. It looks like everything finished successfully. And I'm still getting some squigglies. Let's see if I delete and re-add that letter. And it's still, oh, nope. It finally realized it's all done. Cool. So if we go back here, we should be happy. We're getting component. Yeah, so it knows what we're doing here. Awesome. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started by running this. And whoops, let's, there we go. So in VS Code, Control Tick, I think that works both in Mac as well as Windows if I remember right. That will bring up your terminal and you can start issuing commands there. The command we're going to issue is ng serve. So by default it uses PowerShell in Windows. You can actually change that if you don't like PowerShell, but right now it's sufficient for what we're trying to do here. So it says here we've got a live development server running at localhost 4200. We can just click on that and bring this over here. Where did it go? Uh-oh, I've lost my... Okay, that was weird. Let's try that again. Click here. And it pops it there. I pop this out. And there. Haha! So, we now have this live development server running at 4200. And every time we make a change to our app, it will automatically refresh this view over here. So that's pretty cool. For now, let's just do this. I'll dock this over here and put code over here. And so we can see our changes as they happen. Alright, well let's start playing around with this. If we go down here, let's just test this out. Testing. As soon as you save the file, it automatically reloads, and there we go. So it's kind of like a Plunker-like experience, but now we've got an actual app that's wired up for testing. We've got all of our assets here, and it's really a fully fledged Angular app. We can even check it into source control here. As we can see, we've made some changes here, adding the CSS, changing the HTML, and adding that code to our component there. Alright, so let's see what we can do next, because that was pretty easy. Well, let's say that we want to keep track of how often these different buttons are clicked. Like we want to say this red button's been clicked 8 times, green has been clicked 4 times, blue 3 times, orange once. Well, how would we go about doing that? Well, let's go back to our app component, TypeScript file. We're going to need to create an object to store the state of these different colors here. We could actually do something a little bit more like this, where instead of just being an array of colors, we could say color is red, clicks is going to be 0. And that way we'll be storing the state along with the color. Now in order to change all of these at once, you may have others in here. A really cool handy dandy shortcut in VS Code is if you do Control-Alt down, it will create multiple cursors, and you can type in all those places at once. Color and clicks. I'll have to fix that bottom line. 0 and curly comma. So sometimes the multiple cursors isn't perfect, but that sped up my editing of that pretty quickly. Now, you'll notice I just broke everything. So we need to go back to our HTML, And now instead of saying that the background color is C, C was representing the item in the array. Now we're saying object because this is an object here. We'll want to say C.color is the background color. So let's try that. And then click to change to C.color. And that fixes it. Cool. It still isn't working though. And that is because we're saying on the button click, color equals C. Okay, maybe we need to make that dot color as well. Okay, so now we're back to where we were. Everything's fixed, so to speak. Now we want to actually use our clicks here in order to increment the vote on that color. So I'm going to show you a couple of different ways you can do that. So in this click event, we're just doing a JavaScript expression, color equals C.color. We could just continue this and say C.clicks plus plus, and then have just a span here so we can see what the current number is, C.clicks, and save that. And it looks like something may have broken. Let's take a look. Inspect element, and let's pop this out because that is too small. And console, let's refresh this. Wow, it did not like that at all. Unexpected end of expression, color equals C.color, C.clicks plus plus. The end of the expression, there. Okay, so would it help if I put a semicolon here? Let's see. So I think that the problem here is that we're trying to do more than one thing here, and this accepts a JavaScript expression, but what we're trying to do here is multiple statements. Now this is a little bit different from what you may be familiar with if you've done button on click, because when you do on click on a button, you can actually put as many different statements in there that you want. Now, of course, that wouldn't work because it's not bound to anything. But in theory, if you had the right global variables in place, you could make something like this work in just pure JavaScript. So why is it not working with Angular? Well, the binding is just for this, for one single expression. So this will work, this will not. If we were to just do this, then I think it would work. Let's give it a try. So it wouldn't change this to the color, but it would change the clicks. Let's see here. Oops, that's the wrong window. This is the one. And it looks like it still doesn't like it. Unexpected end of expression. So it obviously doesn't like the plus plus. Equals C.clicks plus 1. And for those of you that weren't familiar with the plus plus, this is basically just shorthand for grab the value of it already and add 1 to it and assign it back. Let's see if that works. And let's minimize this. And it worked. And cool. So the votes are working. Let's see if we can get it to work with both color equals C.color and save that. Let's see if it really does work with multiple expressions. I've never gotten that to work before, but oh, it does work. Well, forget what I said just a minute ago, because apparently that does work. So we got both the votes and that. But here's the thing. It's kind of beside the point. We want to keep our JavaScript as much as possible in the JavaScript file. I mean, it's okay to do kind of these click events where you're just calling JavaScript in the background. Actually, I think you can even do this and it will work. Whoops. Let's see. Oh, no, I was wrong. You do have to have the parentheses there. But you want to avoid putting a lot of your logic in your view. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a function for this, and we're going to call it onColorClick. Because we have a few different things that we want to do when we click this color. Color equals c.color. Now, and remember this dot color. And here's the thing though, we want it to pass in one of our color objects here. So what we could do is we could just say, you know, object, and then just be object.color and object.clicks plus plus. I mean, that would technically work. It's not going to blow up on us. And let's go back here and wire this up here. So color click, and we're going to pass it C because that's the object. And you'll see that that works just fine. But I'd like to take this opportunity to give you a little bit of an insight on how you can use TypeScript to make this work even better. Because you could mistakenly do something like this. And you'll see there's no errors. But when we go to run it, well, it still works there, but I'll bet we're getting some console errors. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, well, let's do console.log object.clicks dot toString. Apparently the plus plus is very lenient. Okay, so you'll see that it's kind of working. We've got the first part working. Something else is not quite right though. And if we go to our here, oh wow, can't find toString on an undefined or null reference because object.clicks doesn't exist. We need a way to convey this common vocabulary of these different objects that we're using different places. So I know we started with this just being a string, and that was fine just being a string array. Now TypeScript is calling this an array of objects that has a property a property color, which is string, and a property clicks, which is a number. So we could, I mean, just basically copy that type annotation from the help there and go color, whoa, caps lock, color string and clicks number. So we could say, you know, whatever object you pass in there, it has to be one of those things. That kind of seems a little redundant to have that, you know, in multiple places there. Although this one is implicitly typed. You know, it's nice if we had another function we're calling that we wouldn't have to copy and paste that. That's kind of verbose. You'll see that it's saying that clicks doesn't exist. It'll protect you from having that error. You can safely get rid of that. So what we'll want to do is we can create a type a type alias for this, or basically an interface, there's a couple of different ways you can define this in TypeScript. You can just say type color info equals, and stick this on there. And sometimes it's useful to create type aliases this way, but most of the time in TypeScript you'll instead see something like this: interface color info. Now, interfaces in TypeScript are a little bit different from what you might be used to if you've done programming in other languages. Interfaces are implicit, meaning that even though we don't explicitly say that these things implement that interface, they can be used as that. For example, let's say that we have a var x, and we're going to say it's a color info. We can say this.colors sub-0, and it's going to be happy with that. Even though it's not using color info anywhere here, it knows that these objects in this array are abiding by that interface. So like, okay, it matches, we're happy. Now if we were to change this to clicks 2, you'd see immediately we'd get an error here saying, wait a minute, these objects aren't compatible with these. So it's kind of nice because TypeScript is very implicit in most cases. You don't always have to add explicit type annotations everywhere. I think that a lot of people that are getting into TypeScript feel like in order to get anything out of TypeScript, they have to explicitly type everything. And I really don't feel like that is true. I feel like you can really take advantage of the implicit typing that TypeScript brings. Now, that doesn't mean there isn't some kind of cost or risk to that, but I like the clean code with minimal types to be able to make it easier to read, easier to understand, and easier to maintain in the future. Okay, so now that we have this type, we don't need that here, but we can use this in other places. If we wanted to, we could actually say that this is going to be a color info array, or the exact same way to write that would be array of type color info. You might see either one of those syntaxes when you're looking at TypeScript code samples. They're exactly the same. I prefer color info array because it's a little more succinct. Okay, so let's go ahead and save that. And as you recall, this should still work because all we've done is adding types, which, let's take a look. TypeScript is not an actual language that runs at runtime. In fact, if we were to go and look at this here, you'll notice we've got these bundle.js files. Let's see here, main.bundle.js. Let's take a look at here. This is basically, whenever you save, it goes through this whole process and creates all of your JavaScript files out of your TypeScript source. You'll see here, this isn't TypeScript, this is just JavaScript. And this is basically, if you wanted to do this in plain JavaScript, this is about how it would look. You've got it, your app component is a function. This is the constructor for that type. And then you hang stuff off of the prototype. And then this decorate, that is where we have this component here. This is just metadata about this class. And since JavaScript doesn't really have any kind of like reflection type stuff like other languages, instead of using that, they use a decorate, which basically you are redefining app component as app component wrapped up inside of this decorated thing that has these options. So that's using the decorator pattern, if you're familiar with that. So yeah, this is basically the output of the code here, and this is what is running. Your actual TypeScript file is just really for while you're coding. It's there for the tooling and for helping you out, but it's not going to be run directly. It has to be transpiled down to JavaScript. So it's kind of nice because you can use whatever JavaScript features you want in TypeScript without having to worry about any of the incompatibilities with browsers, because a lot of the browsers are starting to catch up with ECMAScript 2015, but there's still a decent amount, especially in mobile embedded systems and enterprise users that are using Internet Explorer. They are not ECMAScript 6 compliant or ECMAScript 2015 compliant. So you have to worry about that still. And TypeScript allows you to take all of the features out that aren't going to work on those platforms, and all of the language features out. So you can code with classes, with decorators, and all of these great things, but you don't have to worry about that breaking your people who are viewing it in some of the older browsers. Alright, well this is pretty cool, but I'm thinking that we could maybe do a little bit more. I am going to leave this as a challenge to you to take what we've done here and do something else with it fun. Some ideas you could do is you could make it so that these buttons automatically rearrange themselves, so the one that's been clicked the most goes to the top. One that goes to the bottom is the one with the least clicks. I'll give you a little bit of a hint on that. This is just an array in JavaScript, and arrays, if you say this dot colors equals this dot colors dot sort, this is probably what you'll want to do. This uses a very similar compare function that you may notice from other languages. Takes in one color info and another color info and return either 0, 1, or -1. 0 means they're the same. -1 means that A should appear before B in the list, and 1 means that B should appear before A in the list. So I'm going to leave that as an exercise to you to figure out how to rearrange those. Now I'm just going to just implement something interesting here so you can see how this works. This won't do it by letter, but it will do, or by number, but it will do it by the name. So you can kind of see how this works. You can say return a dot color dot locale compare to b dot color. And you can now see they're in alphabetical order. So that's kind of weird functionality, but now you should be able to see how you could do that. And the locale compare is for comparing strings, but for numbers, you can just use, greater than, less than, equal to be able to construct those things. Something like if A is greater than B, return, what should you return? Play around with it, figure it out. This is the greatest way to learn programming, is just giving it a try. And the great thing is with the live reload, it only takes you saving the page to be able to figure out what it does. This is a great thing about web development, is how quickly you can see the changes you're making turned around and view it in the browser. We'll go into some other ways that you can get immediate feedback on maybe some less apparent to the eye things when we start talking about testing in a few minutes. Actually, let's go to testing right now, and then in the last few minutes I'll talk to you about the project that we'll get started on next. So I'm going to just take this back to where I was with the locale compare. I'm going to write a quick test function to make sure that things are being sorted correctly. So let's go back to our app.component.spec.ts. Now I'm going to just leave most of this alone because I don't want to mess with it. Okay, let's just, yeah, a lot of this is kind of interesting, but I don't have time to go over how all of it works. I'm just going to create a new one. It should, actually, I'm going to create a nested describe. Describe when the button is clicked, the colors should rearrange to alphabetic order. So let's go ahead and collapse these ones we don't care about right now. So basically our test reads app component, when the button is clicked, the colors should rearrange to alphabetic order. Alright, so I'm going to leave this and this. So this is kind of so there's 3 A's in unit testing. You've kind of got your range, act, and then assert. So you set things up, you do something to it, and then you check the result. So what we're going to do to act on this is app dot, oh, that's unfortunate that app component, and you'll see, oh, wait a minute, app.title, yeah, I kind of got rid of that, didn't I? I don't want to mess with that right now, so I'm just going to say title equals app works. That's what it was originally, so I'm not going to mess with that. Whoops. And go back. Alright, and then go back to the tests. Okay, so app dot on color click, and we're going to pass it app dot colors sub-0. So basically we're going to grab the first color in the list here. If we go back here and look at it, that will be red. We're going to shove it into on color click, so we're basically click on red. And then our assert, we're going to figure out if things are in the right order. Now, I'm just going to oversimplify this right now. I'm just going to say app.colors 0 dot color equals blue. Oh, whoops. To equal blue. There we go. And this should be runnable. Let's see if it works. Let's pop up our shell here. Now we're serving up the code, and that's fine. We can either stop that by pushing Control C, or we can just pop out a new tab on that and say ng test. Let's see what happens. Oh, looks like it's failing. It's because when I went out there to oh, that's interesting. So it actually renders it above the component itself. I don't know that I've used the Angular CLI testing tools in a little bit, since they were a little bit less mature. This is kind of interesting. So these things are broken, and at this point you have to decide what is broken, the test or the code. Sometimes when you're making changes to your code, those breaking changes to the test are intentional. And so here, oh, I didn't capitalize that right. And I have to decide, do I want to fix this, or is this really not even worth it to me? Let's see. Let's just fix this for now. And do we need to refresh? Let's see. One failure. So that did fix that one. But it begs the question, these are kind of boilerplate tests that were created with the project. I'm not really using this title app works anymore, so I really don't need to have that test anymore. So I can save that. Let's rerun. I guess this doesn't live reload, which is unfortunate. Rerun the tests. And when it comes up, it should only have 3 specs this time, 1 failure. App component should render title in an h1 tag. Let's go look at that one. Okay, so basically it's saying go out there, find the h1 tag, and it should say AppWorks in there. Well, we've changed that, so we don't want to worry about that. Now, it's interesting because here we're doing fixture.debugelement.component instance. And in this one, they're doing fixture.debugelement.native element. We're not doing the component instance. What I would like to do is compare it to make sure it matches with whatever the name is, so that this isn't just a brittle hard-coded test that'll fail whenever I decide to change things. So I'm going to say const component equals fixture dot debug element. I'm really loving this auto completion in JavaScript here. Well, technically it's TypeScript, but this is great. Component instance here. And now, and I can tell it that it's going to be a app component. Now I can say component dot title. Actually, not title, name. I think that's what it was. Name is all my viewers out there. Yeah. So now, basically, we're saying, don't worry about this hard-coded thing. Just go grab the name out of the component and make sure it matches what's in the H1. Oh, and you'll see here, it reran the tests, and they're all successful now. Hooray! So that's kind of just a quick look into testing. We'll go deeper into testing at a later time, but that should get you started with kind of understanding. I mean, you don't have to worry too much about this boilerplate stuff here yet, but hopefully you understand kind of how it runs here, how these behavioral driven tests work. 3 specs, 0 failures, yay! So I think it does actually auto reload, it just was taking longer than I was patient enough for. App component should create the app. App component, when the button is clicked, the colors should rearrange to alphabetic order. See how that reads? It makes it really nice to not have to worry about what those tests mean, because they've got good names. So we've got 5 minutes left, and I just wanted to take the last couple of minutes telling you what you can look forward to next week. Now that we've kind of created our first Hello World Angular app and gotten our feet wet with it, we're going to actually start building something that is useful. Next week we're going to start creating an app that I've been thinking about creating for a long time, and we're just going to create it together so you can learn along the way. And this is what the app is. So my mother has a lot of books and movies and things that her kids frequently want to borrow from her. However, keeping track of who's borrowed what and when they're supposed to return it and where things are, it has proved to be a little bit of a difficult situation. I have 4 little brothers, so the 5 of us, plus our spouses, those of us who are married, keeping track of all that has become quite a tedious task. We started with post-it notes on the cabinet door, but what we'd really like to be able to do is, since everyone's got a computer and everyone's got a phone, creating a system where people can keep track of things that they've borrowed, and so whenever she wants to know where it is, she can just look that up. So what we're going to do is create a web interface that allows you to add inventory items and display those, and then a way to check things out and in using that interface. And then we'll create a database to store all this data. We'll be using MongoDB, and we'll look at some other options we could use as alternatives to that. Another part of it, when we get further down the line, once you're Angular experts, so to speak, we'll create a native script app that will allow you to use your phone to scan barcodes and kind of check out those things that way. So I'm really excited for this project. I hope that you will join me and code along. I'm sorry that a lot of people must have been pretty busy this week. So every time I've looked, I've been the only one on the stream. So I hope that you'll join me again next week. All you that have joined me in the past. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Right here where I'm at, it looks like it's beautiful weather, and hopefully you'll get to enjoy that. One last thing is I wanted to dedicate this this week's session to someone who lost their life this week out on a Utah highway. He's the brother of Brett Rose's girlfriend. And my heart and my thoughts and my prayers are out to them. Be careful out there, whatever you do, and make sure that you tell the people that you love them and hug them. Life is just way too short. And I hope to see everyone next week. Thanks.